Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Big Stan. This movie tells the story of a man who is a convicted con man and headed for jail. He is frightened and visits a martial arts expert to improve his feeble fighting skills. Will Stan master the moves and fend off his inmates? Let's find out in Big Stan. Big Stan begins by showing a man named Stan Minton discussing with an old woman, trying to offer her an affordable investment property. The two of them got into an argument because the old woman objected to the property price offered. The woman said it was quite expensive since it was in a slum area. Stan tried to convince the old woman, and when they reached an agreement, suddenly the police came storming Stan's office. Stan was brought to the police station for fraud, because it was proven that he had deceived the elderly with fraudulent investments. Long story short, Stan goes to trial. His lawyer, Mal, doesn't want to bribe the judge as he asks to get him out of prison. He then fires Mal and hires a new corrupt lawyer named Popper. Popper managed to get the judge to reduce Stan's prison term so that he was only sentenced to 3 years in prison and given a 6-month suspended prison term. Popper then advises Stan to flee overseas, but he refuses because all his assets have been frozen and he doesn't want to leave his assets behind. On the other hand, Stan's wife, Mindy, persuades Stan to have children soon, but Stan refuses because he thinks it's a hassle. Rejected by her husband, Mindy left him. Feeling fed up with all the problems that befell him, Stan then goes to a bar and pays a man who is an ex-convict to accompany him to chat and tell the atmosphere in prison. The man said that prison is a terrible place, where there is a lot of bullying and harassment carried out by other prisoners. And what is worse, the prison guards seem to allow it. After getting an overview of the situation in prison, Stan uses various ways so that he is not bullied and harassed in prison. He tried to make himself look stocky and muscular with steroid injections, but to no avail. One day, while doing his training at one of the karate dojo, he seemed dissatisfied with the portions and repetitive movements of the exercises, which made him bored because he felt any progress in his practice. He then challenges one of the dojo's students to a fight, but he is easily knocked down. Annoyed that he had been defeated, Stan fought back against the student and beat him brutally. As a result, he was expelled from the dojo for carrying out a brutal attack. Stan then meets an old man outside the dojo who can easily crush a stone wall with just one light blow. Finally, he asks the old man to teach him martial arts, promising to pay him after getting all the money back. Stan then invites the old man to stay at his house and introduces him to Mindy as the master. After living together for some time, Mindy began to feel uncomfortable with the master's presence because of his slovenly lifestyle and smoking habit. On the other hand, during his time as a disciple of the master, Stan was not only taught martial arts, but he also had to practice discipline and diet to increase stamina. Over time, Stan, who was increasingly focused on his training, began to ignore Mindy, until she felt lonely and finally left him because she thought Stan no longer cared about her. Stan tries to convince his wife to stay, but she insists on going. Even without Mindy by his side, Stan continues his training with the master. After undergoing a series of quite extreme physical exercises, he was able to master the martial arts taught by the master. To celebrate his success, he invites the master and Popper to dinner at a restaurant, where the master tells Stan that he is the second student he has coached. The master hopes that Stan never meets his first student because he uses the martial arts taught by him to do evil. After dinner, Stan intends to test his skills in martial arts by challenging Master Chu, the owner of the karate dojo who once kicked him out. Master Chu accepts the challenge and fights with him. However, Stan, who is now a martial arts expert thanks to the master's upbringing and the hard training he undergoes, can defeat Master Chu. Stan, who now feels more confident, then turns himself into the police to serve his sentence. The master and Popper escorted him, while Mindy just watched her husband leave from a distance with tears in her eyes. The scene then switches to showing dozens of inmates who are on a bus that will take them to prison. Not yet reaching the destination, an inmate tries to harass Stan, but he immediately fights the inmate and warns him not to bother him anymore. Upon arrival at the prison, Stan is placed in a cell along with an old man named Larry Shorts. He then asks Larry about the situation at the prison and the prisoners who stand out the most for their strength. While they are in the field, Larry shows Stan some gangs in prison, namely the Black Gang led by Cleon, Mexicans Gang led by Juanito, and the Nazi Gang led by Patterson. There is also a prisoner who is the toughest and likes to intimidate and harass the new prisoners, namely Big Raymond. The big man looks like he is about to rape Robbie, one of the new inmates who goes to prison together with Stan. Because Big Raymond is considered the toughest among the other inmates, Stan then challenges him to a fight and easily defeats the big man. After taking down Big Raymond, Stan makes trouble with the Nazi gang and the Black gang and challenges them all to a fight. But, even though the inmates gang up on Stan, he can beat them all alone. Unbeknownst to Stan and the others, Warden Gasque, a prison warden, is seen watching him from his office and seems to be planning something that will involve him. Since Stan had managed to defeat the gang leaders and Big Raymond, all the inmates scared of him. Robbie then goes to Stan and thanks to him for helping him. Stan tries to adjust to life in prison and makes weapons from improvised items for self-defense. One day, Stan is called by the prison warden to meet Gasque in his office. He came to the warden's office, where the old man offered him cigars and whiskey. Gasque expressed his desire to use the prison land, which is quite strategically a real estate area with high selling value. He wants Stan to help him because Stan is considered to have a lot of experience in the property sector. Gasque offers Stan a reduced prison term and early parole, which is a very tempting offer, and Stan agrees to help him. The scene then switches to show the atmosphere in the prison bathroom, where Patterson tries to attack Stan while he is bathing. However, the action was successfully thwarted by Stan with his homemade self-defense weapon. After that, Stan began to observe the state of the prison and the inmates from a distance, where there were fights and small riots every day. While in Gasque's office checking the completeness of property documents, Stan is approached by Gasque, who introduces him to a man named Dang, who works with him on real estate projects. Stan finds out that Dang is a mafia because of the tattoo on his hand. Stan then tells Gasque that several agreements do not benefit him in the cooperation contract between him and Dang. Hearing this, Dang begins to see Stan as a threat that could thwart his plans to make big profits from the real estate project. The next day, Stan called Popper and asked if his wife was a divorce suit. But Popper said Mindy had not filed for divorce from him. After receiving a call from Stan, Popper is approached by Dang and his men, who then beat the old man. On the other hand, Stan, who misses his wife, decides to send a letter to Mindy, who has now returned to his house and lives with the master. After languishing in prison for several months, Stan adapted well to the prison environment. Stan, who was already well known among the inmates, then decided to change the prison. He collects the inmates in one place and confiscates all of their belongings containing violence elements. He motivates everyone to do positive activities that are fun and can be done together. He also prohibits bullying and harassment and helps Big Raymond find a partner so that he will no longer abuse prisoners indiscriminately. While Stan was eating in the cafeteria, Robbie and his two friends approached him and volunteered to join his group because they were moved by his motivational speech on the field. After that, many other inmates also wanted to join his group. On the other hand, Larry gives a reply letter sent by Mindy to Stan, which says that Mindy wants to meet him in prison. As time goes by, the situation in prison gets better after Stan motivates the inmates. There is no more fighting and chaos. The prisoners get along with each other. Stan finally meets Mindy after so long and reconciles with his wife. Seeing the situation in prison become peaceful, Gasque began to get restless and called Stan to immediately meet him in the office. Gasque raises concern for Stan after seeing the peaceful atmosphere in the prison where it could disrupt his plans. Apparently Gasque was planning to cause such a big mess in the prison that the prison board would issue an order to shoot all the inmates dead. This would pave the way for his plan to turn the prison grounds into real estate. But because Stan has created peace in prison, Gasque's plan is in danger of failing, and the old man then threatens Stan to turn things back into chaos, or Dang will beat him to death. When Stan consults with Popper, his lawyer suggests that he think for himself and comply with Gasque's request to be released sooner. After much thought, Stan finally complied with the warden's request and, reluctantly, began to wreak havoc in prison again. Stan already knew that Gasque would make a big mess when the prison board visited, then asked Larry to stay in the cell and not go out into the field because he was worried about the old man's safety. However, Larry, who realized that something was wrong, alerted the prisoners and planned something with them. The appointed day arrived. Prison council members have arrived at the site for routine inspections. The prison guards have been armed with various tools to bring order to the prisoners who are about to make a big mess. On the other hand, Stan was with the prison council to arrange for the parole granted by Gasque for him. However, Stan changes his mind at the last minute because he can't let his fellow prisoners be shot dead by the prison guards. He deliberately stops his acquittal and rushes back to prevent chaos. As the inmates enter the field, Stan is blocked by Dang and forced to fight him because he has messed up Dang and Gasque's plans. Apparently Dang is the master's first disciple, so he has a martial ability that can match Stan's. The two engage in a fierce battle, but Stan can finally defeat Dang and immediately catches up with Gasque to stop the chaos. Stan calls on the prisoners not to fight, but is stopped by the prison guards. On the other hand, The convicts gathered in the field carried out the plan they had arranged with Larry. Instead of fighting, the inmates danced together, so the guards could not shoot because the activity was not considered a violation. Gasque was annoyed, then grabbed a gun from one of the prison guards and started shooting at the inmates in front of the prison counsel, who was also there. Just as Gasque is about to shoot Stan, Mindy comes to the rescue. It turned out that his wife and the master had sneaked into the prison and found out about the chaos. Stan is finally released from the prison 3 years later, which runs by the new warden. Meanwhile, Gasque, who is now an inmate at the prison, is seen already in the custody of Big Raymond. Popper, Stan's corrupt lawyer, is also a new inmate there. Mindy picks up Stan out of prison along with the master and Mindy Jr. The film ends.